Some of you guys may have gone through the Lord's Prayer as a child. Maybe it's something you learned to say before bed. Maybe you come from a liturgical church and you use that as part of your service, or maybe you've never heard of the Lord's Prayer. But the Lord's Prayer begins by saying, "Our Father who art in heaven." And today we're going to be talking about God as a couple different things, and one of those things is a father. The father that is talked about here is our example of a perfect father, and it's the member in the Trinity known as God the Father. So we all have earthly fathers, but even the best fathers that we have here on earth fall short of the example that God leads for us. He's that perfect example. He'll never let us down. He always loves us. He always cares for us. There's a pastor that writes that we should see God as the actual literal father. Earthly fathers have certain remote similarities to him, but the essence of fatherhood is found in God, not in human beings. And what that means is that God is our perfect example of a father. Again, our earthly fathers will always leave us down, even the best ones that we have. But God will never leave us down as that father. So he's our perfect example, and he's the only perfect example of a perfect father. And then later on in that Lord's Prayer, it says, "Give us this day our daily bread." God is also a provider for us. The word for that is Jehovah Jireh. It means our provider. And as Pastor Jonathan talked last week about a few of the names for God, that's one of those names that is used in Scripture that's translated Yahweh or God, Jehovah Jireh, which means, again, our provider. And one of the first examples of this is found in Genesis chapter 22, when Abraham was being tested by God. Abraham was asked to take his son to the region of Moriah and to sacrifice him there as a burnt offering unto the Lord. So I'm going to read a little bit from Genesis 22, and this starts in verse 10. It says, "But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, 'Abraham, Abraham.' 'Here I am,' he replied. 'Do not lay a hand on the boy,' he said. 'Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son.' Abraham looked up, and there in a thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, 'The Lord will provide.' And to this day it is said, 'On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided.'" I'm going to go back and actually read verse 7. It says, "Isaac spoke up and said to his father Abraham, 'Father.' 'Yes, my son,' Abraham replied. 'The fire and the wood are here,' Isaac said, 'but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?' Abraham answered, 'God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son.'" So here Abraham knew that the Lord would provide for them. We have the same promise today that God will be our provider. He's Jehovah Jireh. He'll meet our needs. And I've personally seen this in my own life as I've prayed for a spouse or prayed for a job or prayed for children as we've adopted our son Maverick. God has never failed us, even though maybe life hasn't looked the way that I thought it would look like. God has never failed us or never lacked to provide everything that we've needed. Again, some of those things may be wants, but everything that we need, God has provided for us. And again, later in the book of Exodus, it says God supernaturally provided manna or bread from heaven for those he loved, for the Israelites that were wandering through the wilderness. And that was their form of nourishment. There was no food in the land. He even provided water for them at some point when they couldn't find water from a rock. So he's our provider. James 1:17 says that every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. So God provides good things for us. He wants the best for us, and he cares about us. And then lastly this evening, I want to touch on God as our creator. In Genesis chapter 1, it says, God created the heavens and the earth. He created light and darkness. He created the sea and the dry ground. He then spoke plants and vegetation into existence, the sun and the moon and the sky, animals, and then finally, he created mankind, created humans. So God is the creator of all of that. He's created everything we see. In John chapter 1, verse 3, it says that through him all things were made, and without him nothing was made that has been made. So God has created each one of us and all that's in the earth that we live in. The sun we enjoy each day, the night, light and darkness. God has created all of that, so he's our creator. In 1 Corinthians 8, chapter 6, it says, "Yet for us there is but one God the Father, from whom all things came and for whom we live." So God has given us life. He's given us breath. He's created each one of us. Psalm says, I'm created fearfully and wonderfully. God has made us that way. He knows the hairs on our heads. He cares about us. He's created us to live for him. So he's the creator of all things. So today, just those couple things that I touched on. God is a perfect, a loving Father. He's Jehovah Jireh, our provider, and then he's our creator. He's wonderfully made each one of us and all that is in the world that we live in. So pray that encourages you today as we continue in this Who Is series, and just as we go into our small group time, just pray that you have great conversation today. Thanks.